political panel is here this morning to discuss. Ian Pryor, Communications Director of American Crossroads, Danielle McLaughlin in the middle, Democratic strategist and Hillary Clinton supporter, and then Camille Foster in the fall sweater ensemble this morning at Freethink Media and co-host of the Fifth Column podcast. Nice to see all of you this morning. Good to see you. Happy fall to all of you. So, Danielle, the argument from Democrats has long been, look, Hillary Clinton's negatives here are sort of baked into the pie. We all know Hillary Clinton. She's been vetted for years. Is the media treating her fairly? When asked, Democrats say, well, we all know this already. We don't even need to uncover it anymore.
At this point, I think, yes. I think what is happening with Donald Trump and these revelations are important and newsworthy. You know, the idea that the mainstream media is ignoring WikiLeaks, I don't think is true. I looked at the Wall Street Journal. There was a brutal piece on her yesterday. There were 17 articles between the Washington Post and the New York Times in the last 3 days.
But let's look at let's look at, first of all, Google Trends as an indicator of what people are searching for online, Camille. So take a look at this. This is yesterday. This is actually over a number of days. Look at this. 1 week. WikiLeaks was the most searched for term compared to Trump women, down significantly lower. And then you look at the nightly newscasts, and it's not a mirror image of that at all. In fact, Trump women gets way more coverage than does the WikiLeaks scandal. Take a look at the difference there in the numbers. So maybe while the Wall Street Journal is writing nasty pieces about Hillary Clinton, the mainstream media seems to be ignoring it.
Well, I'd say that the WikiLeaks brand is a pretty well-established one, and Trump women is one particular way in which someone might look for this. So I'm not certain that's the most scientific way to try to analyze whether or not people care about either issue more or less.
So you're saying that keywords are Trump groping might be another keyword.
that may be it. And, I mean, look, the key thing here is that this story with Donald Trump is a hell of a lot more salacious than sifting through thousands and thousands of emails to try to find out what most of us already know, that politics is corrupt and politicians will almost always be available to people who actually have resources to give and kind of play favorites. That happens in politics. That is to be expected.
Is that a good defense, though, that we kind of already knew this about Hillary Clinton, the quid pro quo at the Clinton Foundation, but now we have real concerns from Chelsea Clinton and which despots are donating money and who's able to then get favors from the Clinton Foundation? Now we see this in print?
No, I mean, I don't think it's a good defense, but I think that's correct. I mean, the media is going to look for a good meltdown. And what they see is Donald Trump, his poll numbers sinking, and they see a meltdown, and there's blood in the water. And then I think, look, the mainstream media is implicitly biased, and now you're seeing that become explicit. And I go back 4 years ago when Mitt Romney accidentally said binders full of women instead of binders full of women's resume, and there was a collective freak out in the media, and they made him out to be, well, Donald Trump, basically. And now you're seeing, well, now you have Donald Trump, and they're just going to go with that until the election, unless there's a smoking gun that comes out in one of Hillary's emails that confirms that the FBI was wrong or that the investigation was tainted.
Daniel, you're shaking your head.
No, and I agree, and I think in hindsight many Democrats will admit that they went after Mitt Romney in a way that was inappropriate and used words that probably are better applied to Donald Trump, using words like dangerous and some of these things. I think in some ways Donald Trump got a pass from the mainstream media early on, certainly in the primaries, maybe because he was such a good story. You know, these Howard Stern tapes, the Howard Stern video. None of this is new. This has been around for a long, long time. And anyone who knew Trump or knew of Trump in the 90s and early 2000s knew exactly who he was. And so in some ways I think the mainstream media did a disservice by not revealing this.
Are you saying, do you agree with Danielle here that maybe the media made Donald Trump? The media wanted this story and therefore overlooked some of the Howard Stern stuff, overlooked some of this NBC stuff, and instead focused on Jeb Bush and Ted Cruz?
Mayhaps. I think even more than that, however, is that it's just harder for voters to get particularly invested in some of the minutia of some of the controversies that are being dug up with respect to Hillary Clinton. It is much easier to wrap your head around a salacious sex scandal. It just works a hell of a lot better for most people. And look, I think there's also something to be said for the fact that both candidates would much rather be talking about their opponent's negatives and digging into these stories. Even before the Trump women revelation started to happen, Donald Trump had made it pretty obvious that he was going to insist on doubling down and throwing a lot of mud and trying to get nasty things to stick to Hillary Clinton, because they both think that the best way for them to win this election is not to compete on ideas or to sell the virtues of their policies. It's to make the other guy or gal look completely unacceptable.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, do, and I think one other point that we, shouldn't left unsaid is that the Clinton operation is not so much a temporary campaign. It is a political machine. The people that are working there have been working in politics for years. They've been dealing with the press for years, maintaining those relationships, as we see from these WikiLeaks emails. So you're going to have a professional operation that's pushing these stories on a willing press versus Donald Trump, who really is a startup campaign. It's going to be easier for the Clinton team to get traction with their stories because of those pre-existing relationships than it is for Trump to get his stories written and his stories covered in the same way.
Final word?
I have to say that there has been nothing from the Clinton camp about these Donald Trump revelations. As this tape was coming out from NBC, Clinton was out there talking about climate change with Al Gore. She was out there releasing a national service plan. So I think she is, and obviously I'm a supporter, but she has been hewing to issues in a way that I think is substantial.
She also goes dark when it's convenient for her. So
she knows, hey, if you're shooting yourself in the foot, step back.
Let Trump be Trump.
Right, exactly. Guys, great to see you this morning. Thanks so much for the political panel. We appreciate it.